The Treasurer is promising to deliver a bread and butter budget in October, and as part of that, he's hoping to start a national conversation about how we pay for the things we need, particularly large and costly items like childcare, the NDIS and aged care services. This week, he unveiled a sizable boost to the budget bottom line, a $50 billion improvement on forecasts made before the election in May. As we look ahead to the budget next month, I spoke a short time ago to Pradeep from Deloitte Access Economics, where I began by asking him about this improvement and how significant it actually is.
Well, look, it is significant because it is an improvement of the budget bottom line. Where does that come from? It comes from unemployment being lower than we'd expected and also commodity prices being higher than we expected. And so what that's doing is reducing expenditures in the federal budget and increasing revenues. And so that's where you get this $50 billion benefit from. But the important thing, Kieran, is that it's $50 billion when we have a large deficit problem, and it's kind of temporary. So what we actually need to do is make sure we bank that well and we do the hard work to structurally start to repair the budget.
When the Treasurer says it's temporary, and you've said it's temporary today as well, isn't it also the fact that the Treasury and the budgets have been grossly underestimating what the commodity prices would be?
Look, that's certainly the case. 6 months ago, we hadn't expected commodity prices to be booming the way they have been. And in part, it's because of Russia's invasion of Ukraine. That war has created a lot of demand for Australian commodities, for our iron ore, and also for some of our agricultural commodities. And so that wasn't anticipated. And what also wasn't anticipated was that unemployment would get to a 50-year low. And so that means the budget is spending less on unemployment benefits and it's getting more revenue because commodity prices have gone up. So you're right, we underestimated these things in the budget, but they are providing a benefit. But you will notice one of the reasons why this is temporary is because commodity prices have already started to come off a bit. And so that's going to be a bit volatile for a little while, which is why we shouldn't bank on commodity prices just doing the trick for the Australian budget.
We're only a few weeks now away. Next month, the first Chalmers budget. He's talking about it being a bread and butter budget. In that description, do you think he's basically saying they'll deliver on their election promises, this budget, look to further changes or reform in subsequent budgets?
Look, they certainly need to deliver on their election commitments. That's an act of faith with the electorate. And all governments, when they come in their first budget, try and deliver or put in place the building blocks to fulfil their election commitments. But you know, the circumstances that we find ourselves in are a bit different. We now know that economic growth in Australia, while it has been strong coming out of the pandemic, is not evenly spread, driven by consumption exports, but not enough around investment. So we need to do things around the structure of the economy to boost investment, innovation, competition, to lift productivity. The second thing is we find ourselves in an environment where the world economy has taken a turn for the worse. So we now need to deal with that. And when we talk about bread and butter, Australian households are facing higher interest rates and higher inflation, and this is a squeeze for them, adding to a lot of uncertainty and volatility. And so bread and butter budgets need to both deliver on election commitments, but also reform.
There's only so much you can do, though, in terms of that squeeze you're talking about, isn't there? Because if the government tries to put money in people's pockets, that's inflationary. Absolutely.
Look, stimulus right now would put more pressure on the Reserve Bank. And so we don't want that. But what we do know is there are no quick fixes. What we need is a considered way of dealing with the structural issues of the economy that have been there for quite a while, but have been left unattended. Which is why in this budget,
what specifically,
we would like to see...
What specifically are you talking about that? Because that structural issue. I'm interested to see what you think the government's talking about here, Pradeep, in terms of this conversation the Treasurer wants to start. He's saying we need a conversation about paying NDIS, aged care, growing defence bills. How do they come up with that structural change, in your view?
Look, during the pandemic, we pivoted the budget towards stimulus, short, targeted spending. But now we've got to pivot the budget towards thinking about the medium term. How do you start to drive investment in the economy? So one of the things that governments should be doing is looking through all their programs line by line and looking at whether some are obsolete, whether some are meeting their purpose. And that's a good way to start to think about, our government spending, our government programs keeping people afloat? Are they leading to increases in investment and productivity? These are the sort of criteria that are the hard work of putting budgets together, and we hope that the government will make a start in this budget.
When the Treasurer talks about starting this conversation, though, I think it makes sense in a political move, because in the past we've seen governments that just announce changes without tilling the soil, that they don't go down well. Clearly he wants to start this conversation. Where is that heading, though?
Look, it is good that they want to start the conversation. It's interesting, having watched the Jobs Summit recently, which was an act of not saying we're outsourcing all the solutions to government. It was an exercise of bringing government, business, unions and community groups together. Now, that's a good way to start to deal with the structural issues of the economy, because there are no quick fixes, there are no easy answers, and it's not just up to governments. Business will have to play a part, unions will have to play a part, community groups will have to play a part. So the conversation is a good way to start to build consensus on what we need to do, and importantly, how we're going to get there.
Lead partner at Deloitte Access Economics, Pradeep Phillip, great to see you as always. Thanks.
Thanks, Kieran.